going to go ahead. I have a little bit of housekeeping notes for everybody. It is now 1:30 Pacific and 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern time zones. So good afternoon if you're on the East Coast, good morning still if you're on the West Coast. Thanks so much for taking time to join us for this session on working with advocacy groups. But before we get started, I have a few brief housekeeping notes. So first, all the attendees right now are muted by the moderator to reduce any interruptions. We encourage you to use the chat function or the Q&A box for any questions that you might have throughout the session. And Hira, who is on the screen here from Global Genes, and I will make sure that those questions get to the speakers. Before I forget, I always forget to introduce myself. I'm Marie MacArthur-Hart with Global Genes as well. So to open the chat, if you go to the bottom of your screen, you can press on the chat button or you can press on the Q&A button. And if we don't get to your questions, if we run short on time, we'll do our best to follow up after the program. If you do have any technical difficulties, if you have any questions about the program as a whole, please visit the help desk in the main lobby and you can chat with either our tech team or Global Genes staff members. And finally, we do encourage you all to participate as active listeners and take advantage of this opportunity to hear from leaders and experts here and ask questions of them. Unfortunately, we did have to make this a virtual event, but in many ways, I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to have a bit of stronger dialogue. So please do take advantage. This program is your time to learn and find answers on critical challenges in rare disease research. So I am very, very pleased to welcome our speakers. We have Rob Long from Uplifting Athletes, Benjamin Fared from Sanford Health, and Vivian Fernandez from REGENXBIO. They're going to each a more complete background as we begin the conversation. But for now, I'd like to invite Rob to go ahead and kick things off.
Well, thank you so much, Maureen. I am so grateful to be here and have the opportunity to speak. I'm going to kind of go through as much as I can, as quickly as I can. I have a video embedded into my presentation. It's only about a minute, but if anybody has any issues hearing it or anything like that, just let me know and we can skip past it. But let me share my screen here. All right. So as Maureen mentioned, my name is Rob Long. I am the Executive Director of Uplifting Athletes. I'm really excited. I was asked to come and speak about working with patient advocacy groups with Uplifting Athletes. We've been very fortunate to be able to work with patient advocacy organizations to help fund and support rare disease research. So I'll talk a little bit about that. In the very beginning, I'll just talk a little bit about the organization, and then if you guys have any questions at the back end, always happy to chat. So looking forward to connecting with everybody. So the mission of our organization is to inspire the rare disease community with hope through the power of sport. We believe we're very uniquely positioned to connect with an audience outside of the rare disease community and to make them aware of the needs and what we can do to support the rare disease community as a whole. We have four main programs. The one that I'm going to be talking about most today is going to be our rare disease research program, but it is only one piece of what we do as an organization, and we're really proud of everything that we're able to accomplish. But really the impact that I think we can have long-term through the rare disease research program is incredibly unique and something that we've prided ourselves on the development and growth of that program over the years. So to help you guys put in context, what is the Young Investigator Draft? The Young Investigator Draft is our program, our initiative to help support rare disease research by elevating and supporting young investigators in the rare disease space. The best way to explain the Young Investigator Draft is if you are at all familiar with the NFL Draft. We took the concept of the NFL Draft and kind of flipped it on its head a little bit. Instead of drafting athletes that are going to be professional football players, we are drafting and supporting young investigative rare disease researchers. We're incredibly excited about everything that's happened since 2018, but The organization developed the Young Investigator Draft. We had our first event in 2018, and we were kind of taking a leap of faith. And, we were starting something new. It was something that we had nothing, nobody had really had laid a foundation for. So we had to kind of build that out. And one of the things that I was really wanted to focus on is making sure that we encourage collaboration in the rare disease space. So the event was launched, as I mentioned, in 2018. We've had 3 events since 2018, the 2018, 2019, 2020 Young Investigator Draft. And since 2018, we've been able to support $300,000 in rare disease research grants. And for an organization that's our size, that's something that we're really proud of. But as you'll see here, this is not something that we've done alone. And that number is as big as it is because of collaboration and working with our partners in the rare disease space. Can you guys hear this all right?
Sure.
You're playing sports in the backyard and you have these dreams to be a professional athlete, no matter what sport you want to be in. The pinnacle of that is being drafted.
Around the country, we're celebrating young, up-and-coming athletes. Tonight in this stadium, we're celebrating young and up-and-coming researchers.
The draft day is the culmination of that work, that time you put in, the blood, sweat, and tears, that somebody's recognized that work you put in and think that you're good enough to play for them. And that's how for us with the rare disease community, that sometimes these researchers get overlooked, but they're having such a huge impact on what's happening in the rare disease space that we want them to know that what they're doing, we want you on our team. You're doing amazing things. We recognize it. And that's why we want this draft to be the way it is.
Tonight, this is about celebrating them as if it was the NFL draft. Uplifting Athletes was founded with the mission to inspire the rare disease community with hope through the power of sport. One of the ways we do this is through recognizing researchers and scientists in the rare disease field for the work that they're doing. They will ultimately be the ones who are responsible for the treatments and cures that we see in the rare disease community.
There are 30 million college football fans in America, and there are 30 million rare disease patients. Which of those 2 groups do you think we know more about? Tonight, that's what it's all about.
All right, so that was our highlight of the event. So what I really want to talk about now is kind of the behind the scenes. We were a small organization. We didn't even have the capacity to develop a scientific advisory board at first. I'm very proud to say that we have 2 of our scientific advisory board members joining us. Both Ben and Maureen have been incredibly generous in helping us continue to develop this program. But really what we wanted to do is to be unique and be really leaders in how we fund and support research and encourage other organizations that have the ability to fund and support research in the rare disease community to take a second look at their approach and how they're doing it. Are we doing what we can to support the researchers and enabling them and empowering them to spend their time and efforts doing research, what they're best suited to do. In principle, we wanted to make sure that these funds were designated to be used to the sole discretion of those researchers. And so all the grants that we give are we are funding the people in the rare disease community. And so that's something that we're excited about. And we've already seen tremendous benefits from that, going about it that way. The biggest thing, that I talked about at the Young Investigator Draft is that going through this process, we learned that researchers are spending 40 to 60% of their time just seeking funding to conduct their research. And the analogy that we use with the community that we work with in the college football student athletes that help us run our college network of chapters is that imagine that if you guys had to spend Sunday through Wednesday just to go fundraise so you could buy your equipment to practice on Thursday, Friday, and then play on Saturday. And it just doesn't make sense, right? We have these brilliant, ambitious minds that are in a position to help and support us and move research forward. We need to do our best to put them in a position to be able to conduct that research and not be hindered by spending a vast majority of their time doing fundraising. The really big thing I mentioned earlier is really the collaboration. Really by setting up our process the way we did, our grant RFP that goes out is actually filled out by the patient advocacy organizations. We do this to encourage the collaboration between the researcher and the patient advocacy organization. we believe that working with a patient advocacy organization as a researcher provides unbelievable benefits and insights to what you should be researching, understanding the needs and desires of that patient community, so that there may be a list of 50 things that need to be addressed. Well, it doesn't help us a whole lot if we're addressing number 31 in that list and not numbers 1, 2, and 3. So by building the relationship with the patient advocacy group, they're the ones that are speaking on behalf of the patients and encouraging the researchers to spend their time on what is most important. Vice versa, the advocacy organizations can then support these researchers by understanding what the projects are that they're working on and being the voice, be the fundraising arm for those researchers so that they are able to continue and progress forward with the research that they're doing, and not have to worry about the funding going through that process. So for us, it's about collaboration. It's about working together. As I mentioned before, that $300,000 number, that's not, we didn't get there by ourselves. And so through our Young Investigator Grant Program, Uplifting Athletes for the first 3 years has put up $10,000 that has been matched by the patient advocacy organization, and then a $20,000 grant has been given to those young investigators to be used at their sole discretion to move their research forward. So all in all, really what we're trying to push forward is the collaboration, and then use the platform that we have to elevate and celebrate these researchers. For those of you who don't know, my personal story, I would not be sitting here talking to you and presenting to you guys if research had not been funded long before I was ever diagnosed. I am a product of what we aim to provide for other families and other people, that they have more time to spend with their loved ones. I was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of brain cancer back in 2010, and I was not really given much of a chance, but because of research and because there was a therapy it gave me an opportunity to continue to live, that's why I'm still here, and I've been very lucky. And so this is something that I truly believe in. We're able to pay it forward and continue to give back to others in the rare disease community by supporting and funding this pivotal early stage translational research that these brilliant minds are conducting. Just to wrap up, what we do as an organization, we're just trying to make the best of what we have. We empower people and help to build relationships within the rare disease community and the patient patient advocacy organization. So really something that we're excited about as an organization to leverage our platform to support rare disease research and the rare disease community, patients, families, everyone. And so I'm happy to answer any more questions about the Young Investigator Draft. But thank you guys all so much for allowing me the platform to share not only a little bit about my personal story, but what we're doing as an organization, specifically through the Young Investigator Draft. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and then next we'll hear from Ben. Rob, if you could stop sharing your screen.
No
Ben
problem.
take over.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'll get my screen shared here. Can you guys see that okay? Should be just the title slide. I first want to just say thank you so much to Maureen and to Ira and everyone at Global Genes and at UPenn just for organizing this event and for keeping it on the rails, even though the universe seemed to be against it. So I really appreciate that this event is still happening, and I even more appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. So big thank you to the organizers for getting this set up. By way of introduction, for those who don't know me, my name is Ben Forrid. My background is in cell and molecular biology, so I spent the better part of a decade working in a research laboratory focused on researching a rare disease called Friedreich's ataxia. And so my background is very much in the bench sciences, looking at things from a real basic cellular point of view. And after I was there for a little while, I moved out of the lab and into kind of more of an administrative role within Sanford Research, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I currently am one of our clinical research directors. I oversee our rare disease, genetics, and genomics portfolio. And I'm also the director of our CORDS Rare Disease Registry, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a little bit. So just to introduce the company I work for, I work for Sanford Research, which is located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We are the research arm of a large hospital system that basically covers the entire Northern Plains region of the United States, and it's called Sanford Health. It's like Stanford, but without the T. And so we're kind of out in the Midwest, and we've built up since 2010 about 40 basic and translational research labs, with about half of those having a focus on rare conditions. So rare disease is something that we've kind of made a pillar of what we focus on. It spans the whole gamut. We have folks that are interested in neurodegenerative disorders like Batten disease. We have other laboratories that are focused on skeletal disorders or kidney conditions. And it spans the whole range of human physiology. And so we really try to approach our work within the rare disease community from that kind of standpoint there. In 2010, kind of out of that spirit, we recognized that when you're researching a rare condition, because there's not a lot known about it, it's hard for you to take cues from where to steer your ship, where to look, and you really have to go to the experts to get kind of a compass or something to use that you can use in your work. And in the case of rare disease, the experts are the patients themselves, the people who are living with the condition. And so what we did was recognize that there is not a single database where patients can provide data about their lives, and do it in a way that's accessible to researchers. And so in 2010 or 2011, we created the CORDS registry, which is something I've been a part of for a few years now. First and foremost, CORDS is a contact registry. We ask anyone with any rare condition to provide their name, address, phone number, just ways that we can get in touch with you later on. On top of that, we've built out an online platform by which we can collect standardized common data elements. These are standard health things that health questions, demographic questions, things that the NIH tried to kind of put into one bucket, so that everybody out there that's doing what we're doing is doing it in the same way, and that would help share data across different platforms. So we have what we call our standard questionnaire that everyone fills out, no matter what condition they live with. The third tier of our program is working specifically with advocacy organizations to create disease-specific questionnaires. And I think it's that top of the pyramid. That's the reason that I'm speaking here today on this panel, because since 2016 or so, we've been able to grow our partnerships with rare disease advocacy groups from around 20 to today. We have 65 or so advocacy organizations that we've partnered with to create registry questionnaires. And so this is a service that we provide at Sanford. We built this tool to be a resource for the rare disease community. And as such, we don't charge anyone any money to participate. So this is a completely free thing. It's free to put your information in if you're a patient. It's free to access it on the back end if you're a researcher. And it is 100% free if you're an advocacy organization that is trying to build up the canonical database of the disease. And so that's a little bit of background on CORDS and what we've got going on. I kind of went into this a little bit, but I do want to highlight the instruments themselves. So PRO is patient-reported outcomes. These are different from clinical measures in some ways. We have on our standard questionnaire the demographics and symptomology that I mentioned, but we also, in a common way, approach quality of life questions too. Again, go back to what I said earlier. This is a situation where the experts here are the people living with the condition. We're trying to learn from them. And so it's just as important to ask them issues about what medications have you been taking? Have you had your heart scanned? Those sorts of things. It's also important to know, do you sleep well? Are you depressed? How is your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10 on the average day? Getting those sorts of bits of information tell us as researchers what life is like with a rare condition. We then dive deeper into disease-specific questionnaires. Again, we work with folks with their advocacy organizations. A lot of times we'll try to loop in the medical advisory board or the scientific advisory board. We as researchers have our own networks, and so sometimes if an advocacy group isn't at a position where they have a fully formed scientific advisory board, we can reach out to people in the field and say, we're trying to do this. Can you help us? And so far to date, everyone has been very, very collaborative and willing to help develop these questionnaires. We have a pretty versatile format. We can ask questions on any part of the condition. It's a pretty open book. We try to keep it user-friendly so that people can easily breeze through those different things. One of the big questions or the things that people have to tackle is how to ensure that you're collecting robust and high quality data. These are patient-reported outcomes, and if you read literature, you know, go out to conferences, sometimes patient-reported outcomes are minimized in some cases because there's not any clinical data to back or verify what's going on there. And so what we try to do is ensure that it is as easy as possible for the patient to provide us as accurate information as they can. And so when we'll ask a question, maybe there's a condition that it's common for people to be on any one of 4 different medications. Instead of simply asking them, what medications are you taking, and allowing them to type it in, which opens you up to problems with typos and you know, spellings of words, then we can create things like drop-down menus where they only have those 4 options, and you kind of limit them to what they're able to put in. We also give people the opportunity to upload documents. So as often as the case with genetic reports or things, we can ask them about specific mutations, and a patient can provide that information. But sometimes it's easiest to just look at the report itself and go from there. So we also have that function. The last thing is a video that I've also embedded into the program. So like Rob, I'm going to start it and ask you if you can hear it. If you can't, then I'll figure something else out. But this is a video that kind of highlighted a story that unfolded a couple of years ago now. We have a researcher named Dr. Kamesh Surendran who focuses on a disease called Alagille syndrome. It's a multi-system disorder. And each spring we host a regional or a national rare disease conference at our research facility. And this particular year, the Alagille Syndrome Alliance held their board meeting at our facility. We are kind of centralized to where everyone was located, and it worked out well to host them. And so they came, and they actually got to meet Kamesh. They were the first group of patients that he had met. And you know, ahead of time, we were like, wow, this is really awesome. We should try to catch this on film. And so there was a cool kind of effort to mobilize and get our marketing team involved. And so I've got a short video that kind of explains Sanford Health, who we are, what we do, and then also kind of tells this story about the ways that we work with advocacy organizations to bridge that gap between advocacy and research, and to try to make those connections that last. So I'll show the video here, and let me know if you can't hear it.
Yeah, Ben, I'm not hearing the sound, unfortunately.
Okay. Let's try this. Nothing?
Maybe try turning it up a little bit.
Got it up as high as it goes.
Oh gosh.
For what it's worth, it's really blaring to me. So.
No, Ben, we could certainly share this afterward too. Oh, wait. Somebody says there's a drop down to share sound, but we could also we could send out the link and everybody could watch afterward.
Sure. I was hoping it would be just there in the right click button. Okay. Well, unfortunately, that was the last slide that I've got here. So, you know, like I said earlier, if you have any questions or you want to know anything more about the registry or me in general, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Great. And we will send that link out to everybody so that you have it afterward. We'll share that with everybody at the symposium. And now we're going to turn it over to Vivian Fernandez with REGENXBIO, and I'm going to share my screen with her slides.
Just want to make sure you all can hear me. I did unmute.
Yep.
Okay,
All
good.
right.
Okay, awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I would also like to thank the organizers for inviting me to take part in the symposium. I feel I'm in very good company here with Rob and Ben, and I want to thank them for sharing their own efforts to advance science by working with patient organizations. I think we're all extremely committed to that. So I head up patient advocacy at REGENXBIO. We are a gene therapy company based out of Rockville, Maryland. I joined the company in 2016 when we were just under about 40 employees and we were not quite yet in the clinic. So it was a really great time to open the function, open the role. I've been in industry for a very, very long time. I won't give the number. Let's leave it there. But would love to spend a few minutes just talking about my experience from the industry side of the fence and working with patient groups. So if you could go to the next slide. So first sorry, go back a slide, please. So just to say that the views and opinions I'm sharing today are entirely my own, based on my own experience, and not necessarily REGENXBIO's. Next slide. So as we all know, there are many stakeholders involved in the drug development process. Patients have a unique role in the process. I think Rob alluded to this earlier, and Ben as well. They're subject matter experts. They know what it's like to live with a devastating condition. So they're going to bring their own personal perspective, and it really lends credibility. It brings credibility to the conversation. So we heard it this morning from Jim and from Chris that we really need to collaborate with patients. We need you now more than ever because the challenges of developing rare disease treatments continues to be a challenge. So collaborating early is really the only way to go to keep the focus on patients, helps us create that foundation for trust and ongoing collaboration, and really helps guide the work that we do as sponsors. And they can be great partners. Next slide, please. So likewise in industry, within our own organizations, the patient advocacy role is a key stakeholder, and we have a seat at the table on product development teams. So our role is really to bridge patients and research teams, making sure we understand the patient perspective and that the patient is always part of the conversation. That's the only way we're going to advance research. And in my mind, this approach to working so closely with patient groups is an attitude, it's a mindset, and it really needs to be embraced at all levels of the organization, from our CEO all the way down. And it's something that as patient advocates, we have to continuously promote within the company. Next slide, please. Thank you. Taking a closer look at our role within industry, 4 key pillars. Our goal to engage and support, build a network of support through our relationships with key groups and advocates. A big part of our role is to educate and inform communities about our science, about products, about drug development process. Critically important to listen and understand those diverse perspectives, because there's always a range, and really have our finger on the pulse in terms of what the community needs. And then we have all these insights, and it's critically important that we integrate, we bring those learnings and we share them with our teams so that we can guide researchers in making what we hope are good decisions on our research programs. If we do our jobs right, then what we're doing is really creating a culture that values the patient perspective, and a culture that wouldn't move forward without getting it. Next slide, please. So I know this is a very busy slide, and many of you have seen this slide before or versions of it. And I want to say that the version Chris showed this morning before lunch, which was more of a maze, is in reality probably how it really is. But this is taken from the CTTI recommendations a few years back. And I just want to point out a few things, that there are clearly many ways that patients can support the drug development process and really have a positive influence on that journey, from pre-discovery through clinical trials, however that looks for a particular disease, through approval and even beyond approval. But the company has to be open to involving patients. Again, the company has to embrace and adopt that mindset. And if we do engage early and in the right way, we de-risk all of our programs. So we increase the likelihood of these programs being successful. And at the end of the day, we're all in it to bring new therapies to market that mean something to patients. And they will, because we involve them in the process. So engaging is about looking for and creating opportunities to have good dialogue and good collaboration. This chart needs to live in our heads. We need to be thinking about this all the time and challenging our teams to engage better and sooner. One of the things I often do when I sit on development teams, if I hear team members talking about, oh, maybe this is the right time to engage a few of the thought leaders, a little antenna goes up, and I think, okay, if we're going to engage thought leaders, we should be engaging patients. And so I always ask the question, are we also going to get patient input at this time? Partnering isn't easy. There are challenges. These interactions can be complicated, so you want to start them as early as you can and take time to build those relationships and set the expectations. And engagement can be sometimes as easy as staying in touch periodically with organizations, checking in even if you don't have any new news, or asking them, how can we help you today? Next slide, please. And patient groups may not realize their value, but they also benefit from working with us. Again, their voice is heard, they're involved in the conversation. Hopefully they have a strong presence with the company, and they can help influence and shape thinking and decisions. I think that being involved in the research process helps elevate the profile of that organization, brings them credibility. Hopefully also with that, organizations can grow, become more influential, and more connected in the rare space and diversify as a group. It's also very rewarding, I think, for patients and families to be a part of the solution, right? And contribute to that larger body of knowledge that we're all trying to get a handle on and advance the research for these diseases. Next slide, please. And since we're talking about researchers, I wanted to say a few words about lab tours because we give them quite often, and our researchers in the lab don't have as many opportunities to engage with patients and families, and so they just love to receive visits. And of course, you know, any chance they get to attend any internal event that we may have, like our annual rare disease company event, they're all there. But I think what they really enjoy is the opportunity to engage those families personally, you know, in their own workspaces, in the labs, to talk about the science and answer questions. And it really gives meaning to the work they do, and gives them that sense of urgency that it personalizes the diseases for them. And so ahead of the conference, I reached out to a few of our researchers, and we just asked them a couple of questions, and whew, did I get really good answers. So they're there. Maybe you all can read them at your leisure. And I do want to point out that one of our researchers, who's pictured in the lower photo, was so inspired by these visits that he realized, I really want to work more closely with the community. So about 4 months ago, we moved him to Patient Advocacy, and he's doing a great job. So next slide, please. Okay, and then just a couple of words about ad boards. It's a common, very traditional way for industry to engage patients and caregivers and get insights. We love partnering with patient organizations to help organize these and identify the individuals that will participate. We love holding them in our offices. Our CEO and our Chief Medical Officer love to stop by and meet the families if they're in town. So we usually try to hold them in the office, and we also love to then be able to offer the lab tours. We're just always amazed at how generous patients and families are about giving their time and sharing their knowledge. And the research teams who participate in these meetups, you know, love to listen and learn firsthand from families. And they take the feedback very seriously, and those learnings and the feedback is applied to decisions that we make. So we get a lot out of them and build a lot of great relationships from these initial meetups. Next slide, please. So if we were to take our temperature within our organizations about patient engagement, what would that look like? You know, how are we doing? Are we walking the walk? Are we doing enough? And I think if we have the right approach, again, the right mindset about engaging the community in our work, we should be asking these questions all the time. Is patient engagement really embraced in our organization? How do we view the patient community? Are they subjects that, right, they may sign up for one of our clinical trials, or are we really treating them as partners? Basically, they have a seat at the table with us, and they're providing deep insights on our programs and helping guide our decisions. How often do we engage with the community? Do we do it regularly, even if we don't have news to share, and just check in to see, how are you? Or do we engage them only when we need them? Do we engage them in a meaningful way? Are we meeting their needs, or are we just worried about ours? Are we engaging the right people, and are we engaging them at the right time? Next slide. So just to wrap up, if we want to be successful in bringing new therapies to patients with rare disorders, we have to engage early and we have to develop strong partnerships with our patient communities because they are the ultimate stakeholder in this process. They provide critical thinking, critical perspective that helps guide our work. Many ways that the communities can help industry, help researchers throughout the process. Partnering isn't easy, and we know the path to approval isn't easy, but the best partnerships are those that are based on trust and good communication. Our role within the organization as patient advocates is to be that conduit for communication and insights. We're the bridge between our teams, our researchers, and the patients. Partnering is a mindset. It's a commitment to the patient voice. And think about what your organization's temperature is on engagement. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you all so much. And we have about 20 minutes left. And so I would like to see, we have some questions that have come in from the audience. So let's take a look at some of those. And I apologize here, I'm just gonna scroll back. One question was, what are some ways that young investigators can find advocacy groups to work with, and vice versa? Advocacy groups can find young investigators to work with and collaborate with.
I mean, I think this is a great question. I think this is a huge piece that we're still working to try and resolve, candidly, right? I think we need to get these researchers as they are, entering, that next phase of their career, and give them, a peek into what they can do in the rare disease community. And I think that's where, we as a community can work to find a better way to have the opportunity where these young investigators can engage with different rare disease research groups. I think the amazing thing about research being done in the rare disease community, there's so many opportunities for people who want to make an impact to leave a massive lasting impact on a lot of lives by choosing to explore the rare disease path and to link up with a specific rare disease organization. So I think there are ways that we can begin to develop within the rare disease space to help invite these researchers when they are at that phase where they have to start to pick the direction that they want to go. So I think there is a little bit of a gap there in what we currently have, but I think also we as a rare disease community can do a better job to kind of reach out to them and present the opportunities that we have to these young investigators, because I think it's unbelievably appealing, and it's such an amazing space to work within. I'm sure a lot of the people on the call understand how amazing some of the people that we get to interact with, whether it's industry, whether it's patient advocacy groups, whether it's the patients themselves and the families. They're all just unbelievable people, all working towards the same thing. And so I think there's an opportunity there to bridge that gap in a better way.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Rob. I hope you can hear me okay. I switched my microphone. Okay, great. I think that it's hard for both parties to find each other. And lately at scientific meetings and big conferences, I think they've started to do a bigger push for like patient advocacy pavilions and areas where there are places that you can interact as an advocate with a researcher. I've always been a strong advocate for patient organizations putting a poster together and having a poster set at the poster session at a scientific conference. I think Global Genes has a really great toolkit that can help you work through that as well. In terms of what I do for a living and CORDS, the registry, I see that as a bridge that Rob was describing. I make the joke all the time that advocates and researchers are like seventh graders at a dance, and they desperately want to talk to each other, but they don't know how to get out there. And I think that we have young investigators that come to us that say, I'm studying a certain biochemical pathway that is implicated in this disease. I'd like to learn more about the disorder, and we can share them with de-identified data. If there's an advocacy group involved, we make that connection. And we've seen cool relationships build out of that. And so I think it's really, truly through kind of thinking outside the box that some of these new relationships are formed these days. So yeah.
I'll just add quickly, I agree with Rob and Ben's perspective, and the rare disease community is a really tight, well-resourced. We're used to looking under every rock for the right physician, the company, the patient organization. So there are lots of resources in rare. Reach out to people. You'd be surprised who knows whom. So, and Global Genes is a great resource for connecting.
Great. So another question that came in is really how can researchers think about working with patient advocacy organizations? What kinds of things might they want to consider as they are building out relationships with patient advocacy organizations?
I think from a scientist's perspective and from the researcher's perspective, there's often the need to engage the patient community for even things like biospecimens, finding the resources that they can have to do the work. And if I would have gotten my stinking video to work earlier, one of the things that was really awesome in that relationship or in that encounter was that here we were able to bring an advocacy organization to site, and there we have a researcher, and they provided some blood and skin punches to culture cells and to try to understand what's going on at the most basic level in this disease. And so I think from a scientific standpoint, that's there. There's also larger pushes from advocacy organizations to formally fund research, to try to put their hat in the ring and accelerate those therapies. People like Rob Long are doing God's work out there, trying to make those connections and fund the young investigators who are looking to build a career. And so when a researcher, I think, is engaging an advocacy group, those are some of the things that I think they're thinking about. From the opposite angle, advocacy organizations approaching researchers, I think, are getting a lot more savvy with the ways that they're willing to share their data and the ways that they're willing to give, the conditions under which they're willing to give those samples for very good reason. And so I think that there should be just a really open and honest conversation anytime that relationship is starting to build, and lean on more established connections that you have in the rare disease community to help make sure that things are done the right way.
Ben makes some great points. I think really there has to be some responsibility placed, really on both parties for the patient advocacy organization to make sure that you're doing what you can to provide the right resources to the researcher, right? That you are asking the right questions of your patients and their families. That you're collecting that data, as Ben said. If it is specimen samples, anything like that, that you do your job of being organized and facilitating good communication with the researcher. The last thing that a researcher needs is to be waiting on or to be held up by incoherent or inconsistent communication with a patient advocacy organization. So I think just being respectful of what that researcher is trying to accomplish, and doing what you can as a patient advocacy organization to prepare yourself to get to that step. Working with someone like Ben at Cords, where you say, hey, we do have a registry, we do have a natural history study prepared, and here's everything that we could possibly get ready for you. What else can we do, right? Be as ready and prepared as you can be, and those resources I know are out there, whether it's through Global Genes, whether it's through Sanford, but just making sure that you have your ducks in a row to go to those researchers, to find those researchers, and to put your best foot forward for them.
I don't think I have much more to add. Well said.
Great. And I just want to point out that we do have about 10 more minutes left. I'm just trying to keep cognizant of the time so that we can make sure for those who want to join our rare rounds that we have that time available. I'll have a little more information about that in just a minute. One other question that came in is, beyond just kind of reaching out, what kinds of advice do all of you have, really both for researchers and for patient groups, and maybe collaborations of researchers and patient groups on building strong relationships with organizations like all of yours, funding organization and a clinical care organization and a pharma organization?
So I think the first part of the question kind of like, what is that engagement? And I think, what you really want to do is, especially from a researcher's perspective and both the patient advocacy, what is your vision? What are you hoping to accomplish? And making sure that the goal is set and the vision is set, and that both parties are understanding of, what that is. I don't, it doesn't become beneficial for a patient advocacy organization to have the understanding that a researcher is going to find a cure in the next 6 months, when a researcher is saying, hey, I'm just trying to get a basic understanding of what is going on. So, making sure that we understand what the steps are and the process that we need to put in place to get to our ultimate goal. Is it, what is our, what are we hoping to accomplish, over the next 6 months, over the next year? Where do we hope to be in 5 years, and what steps can we take, in order to build that out, right? What natural history studies do we need? What registries, how many people do we need to get signed up to a registry? So going back to almost the previous answer, it's being prepared and being on the same page when you have that right researcher that you find that you're able to connect with. Hey, how can we help support you, and what do you want to be able to accomplish? And I think that collaboration becomes mutually beneficial to everybody involved.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, the earlier you can have those crucial discussions, the better. A lot of it is about just getting to know each other, to be comfortable. So you have that, it could be a new relationship, you just need to get to know one another, understand where you meet and align on goals and vision, as Rob said. I'd say also leave the egos at the door. I mean, we're focusing on helping bring therapies to patients. So there's got to be a lot of listening and learning and communication. But and we don't always know where we're headed, but that will really help get you through good times and bad. Because if you're in this line of work and you don't think you're going to have bumps in the road, then maybe you should work somewhere else. In every clinical program I've worked in, even those that aren't rare disorders, things don't always go as planned. And if you have the relationship there to fall back on, sometimes you have to have difficult discussions. So spending as much time in the beginning as you can to just get to know one another and understand that you actually do have a lot in common you'll go a long way.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Rob and Vivian just said. I'll summarize kind of in 3 points. I think it's important to be honest from both sides, be organized as you can be. But I'll add to that, be realistic. There's also the advocates have absolutely every right to be as on fire as possible to get things to move along as quickly as they can. But there is also a right way to do things that sometimes requires taking the time to make sure you tee up your shot. And that's kind of the world of research. There's a cart and a horse, and we have to make sure they're in the right order before we begin. Otherwise, you run into big problems down the road. And so setting up things like registries, what we do, is a good example. There's a right way in and there's a less right way to do that. And I think we can, one of the things that we hope to do is give people that leg up early on so that when they do engage a researcher, that there's a resource there to say, here's all of these people. This is a foundation that we can build this relationship on. As long as you're being honest and organized, I'd predict success there.
Well, we have 5 more minutes left, and I'd like to take this opportunity just to have each one of you on the panel just share what is really most exciting to you over the next year or few years about young researchers in rare disease research. And we'll start. I'll Vivian, if you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah, so what excites me the most about this space, all the advances. Now I'm working in gene therapy at the moment, and the promise of gene therapy, the potential to significantly impact lives is really exciting for me. I love the innovation in this space and collaboration between patient communities and researchers and industries like I've not seen in any other space. And also the explosion of clinical trials. I look back just a few years in some of the therapeutic areas I've worked in, and it's just mind-blowing the number of new trials. So it's a very exciting time to be working in rare.
All right, Ben, real quick, couple minutes.
Yeah, no, I can be fast. I think that there's researchers have more data at their fingertips now than they ever have had. And I think access to that information and knowledge makes it a really cool time to be a part of this, especially in the rare disease space. You can learn things about some disorders, apply them to others pretty quickly if you've got all that information. But like Vivian said, coming into the game when gene therapy is kind of coming into its own is a really cool time. The technology we're dealing with today seems like super space age science fiction stuff. I can't even imagine what we're going to be doing in 30 years, and so this is a neat way. And I just need to remind everybody, innovation starts in the rare disease space in a lot of cases. And that's my pitch to anybody who wants to make a career out of this part of it.
Rob?
Yeah, so kind of echoing what Ben and Vivian said, I think for me, the most exciting thing, for us as an organization being, on the smaller side and just starting this program over the last 36 months, what's so remarkable, and Ben touched on it, is, how innovation is driven in the rare disease space. And we put together these young investigator grants that were intended to be seed grants to help these young investigators, start to lay the groundwork for what they want to pursue in their careers. One of the amazing things that has come out of this, we worked with an unbelievable organization that's headed up by one of the speakers here at the Rare Drug Development Symposium, Dr. David Feigenbaum, and the Castleman's Disease Collaborative Network. And the research that we supported through the CDCN, we found out a couple of weeks ago, and this speaks to the translational nature and what can happen within the rare disease space, that they're learning that the body's immune response in Castleman's disease is very similar to that in COVID-19. And so you think about, what does Castleman's disease have anything to do with COVID-19? And then you dive into the research and the understanding of it. And now we're progressing towards something that it wasn't the initial intention, but all of the benefits that are reaped from investing and supporting rare disease research they're going to be and continuing to be almost immeasurable in the impact that we have. We learn so much when you take a deep dive into something to understand it at such a detailed and specific level. It's the old analogy of, is an inch wide and a mile deep, or a mile deep and an inch wide. And so, for rare disease research, this is, an inch wide and a mile deep. This is a true understanding of what the different body functions are and the molecular makeup and cellular reactions. So it's just unbelievable, I think. And what's so inspiring for me is seeing that, an organization of our size and what we've been able to do in just the last 3 years, that, this can be done by anybody and other people in disease-specific organizations. So it's really exciting to me, the benefits of rare disease research and what we're going to be seeing in the near future.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that's well said at the conclusion about the importance of thinking about what we can learn from rare disease and how it informs other efforts as well as vice versa. So thank you all so very much. This was just wonderful. I do want to say we do have our rare rounds next, which are roundtable discussions. They're going to be very interactive. So to enter the rare round sessions, please go back to the auditorium and click on the center logo and the agenda will pop up. And if you scroll down to the rare round session right now, you'll click join and that will get you a list of the roundtable topics. And then you click on the topic that you want to attend, you enter your name and email address and click register and the link will show up for that. And then you click on that link and you'll join. So thank you all so much. We'll make sure to get the video links out to everybody and any questions that weren't answered, we'll try and get some answers to everybody afterward. And again, thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.